At my sister's wedding, I found my seat outside, next to the trash cans. The hotel was a grand old house on the edge of a small town in Virginia, all white columns and polished floors, the kind of place I used to see only in magazines. Inside, chandeliers glowed over round tables covered in white cloth and gold plates. The music was loud and bright, spilling out every time the glass doors opened. My name card, Dawn Carter, was taped to a tiny table on the patio, squeezed between two gray metal trash cans and a wheezing outdoor heater. The air smelled like cold air, old roses, and the faint sour mix of leftover champagne and food. Claire floated past me in her wedding dress, all lace and sparkle, her hair pinned up with pearls. She looked like every dream she'd ever had about this day had come true. Jason, her new husband, hovered at her side, tall and careful, one hand always ready to catch her bouquet or fix her veil. When her eyes fell on my lonely little table, she smirked. "Guess you don't count," she said, just loud enough for me to hear, then slid back inside with him, as if she hadn't just shoved a knife between my ribs. I wrapped my fingers around my glass of white wine and tried to swallow the hurt along with it. I told myself it didn't matter. I was used to being on the outside. I'd built my first company from a secondhand laptop in a tiny rented room in a cramped house in Ohio. I moved to New York City with 2 suitcases and exactly $420 in my checking account. I coded at night, worked days in a coffee shop, and listened to customers complain about how they never knew where their money was going. Clear Ledger, the app one built to track every dollar in and out of small shops, started as a simple idea on a napkin. Then one bakery signed up, then a hardware store, then a cafe in Boston, then a beauty salon in Chicago. A year later, I had shops using it from one coast of America to the other, and even a small team in Europe asking about licensing. When the firm from New York and London called, I thought it was a prank. They said they liked my numbers, liked my product, liked my stubborn refusal to take on debt. They offered $18 million. I said no. They came back with $22 million. I said no. In the end, we settled on $30 million, all in dollars, wired into my account over a single long afternoon while I stared at my banking app in disbelief. I bought my parents a small brick house in Ohio outright, left the peeling rental behind forever, and upgraded my own life from a studio apartment in New York City to a modest 2-bedroom with a view of the river. Somewhere along the way, I became Dawn, the one who made millions, instead of Dawn, Claire's older sister. The funny thing is, money never changed how I saw myself. I still felt like the girl counting coins at the kitchen table, but it changed how my family looked at me. My mother bragged to her friends. My father asked careful questions about taxes and savings. Claire went quiet for a while. When she did talk, it was with a sweet sharpness, as if every word had sugar on the outside and glass on the inside. So when I saw my seat by the trash cans, I understood. She didn't want my story to compete with hers. She wanted to be the only star in this house tonight, and I was the unwanted spotlight. I checked my phone to give my hand something to do. A new message from Daniel, my lawyer, sat at the top of the screen. "You know you're officially free now, right? No more board calls. Just $30 million and your next chapter. Proud of you." I stared at the number, all those zeros, and then at my metal chair pressed up against a trash can. Somewhere inside the ballroom, they were clinking glasses and shouting toasts. Someone laughed so hard I could hear it through the doors. The band started a new song. The bass thumped through the floor. I looked at the time. It was 9:11 p.m. 11 minutes later, the chandeliers went dark, the music died mid-beat, and a single, terrible scream cut through the night from inside the house. When the scream cut through the dark, my body froze, but my mind did something strange. It went backward. While people inside the house stumbled and shouted, I stood on the patio for one long breath and remembered another blackout in another house many years ago. It wasn't a grand house with chandeliers and flower walls. It was our old rented place in Ohio, the one with the crooked porch and the windows that whistled in winter. I was 12. Claire was 9. That night, the lights went off in the middle of dinner, and our whole world vanished into black. My mother had cursed under her breath, then caught herself and apologized, as if the darkness might be offended. My father found a candle in the drawer and lit it. The flame showed us how tired they both were. I still remember the way my mother stared at the stack of bills on the table, as if they were a test she had failed. "I'm astounded," she said, voice cracking. I was short by $9, and they shut it off. That number stuck with me. $9. Our electricity, our comfort, our sense of safety, all cut over $9. Claire cried that night, loud and open, the way children do when they believe adults can fix everything. I didn't cry. I sat there and listened to my parents whisper about how to stretch my dad's next paycheck and which bill could wait. In that moment, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would learn how money worked, every cent of it. I would never let numbers surprise me again. If anyone turned off my lights in the future, it would be because I chose to flip the switch, not because a bill was $9 short. School became more than a place to pass time. It became my training ground. I loved math because it felt honest. 2 plus 2 was 4, no matter how poor or rich you were. I loved computers because they followed rules and didn't mock your shoes or your lunch. While Claire joined every school club that had a sign-up sheet and practice cheer routines in the hallway, I stayed in my room with a used laptop that my uncle had given me. It ran hot and loud, but it worked, and that was enough. I taught myself to code by copying examples from free tutorials and breaking them until I could fix them. The first version of Clear Ledger was ugly. I built it during college in Chicago, between shifts at a coffee shop where I burned my fingers on metal pitchers and listened to tired owners complain about missing money. They weren't being robbed. They were just drowning in chaos. Receipts in shoeboxes, numbers scribbled on napkins, rent and supplies and wages all blending into one big fog. I thought about my mother at that kitchen table in Ohio and decided I could give people like her a small light. So I built a simple app that tracked what came in and what went out, in clear lines instead of messy piles. At first, nobody noticed. Then a bakery owner, who liked me because I always spelled her name right on the cups, asked what I was working on. I showed her Clear Ledger. 3 weeks later, she told me she'd finally seen that her morning sales were strong, but afternoons were dragging. She changed her menu, saved a few $100s a month, and then told her cousin, who owned a hardware store in another town. The way money moved in their lives started to change, one clear line at a time. That was when I realized I didn't just want to escape my past. I wanted to rewrite it for other people too. When the firm from New York and a partner office in Europe called about buying Clear Ledger, I thought of that dark house again. I remembered the weight of my mother's silence and my father's forced jokes. I remembered Claire rolling her eyes at me in high school when I said I'd move to New York City one day. "Sure," she'd said, "and I'll marry a movie star." She didn't marry a star, but she did get the big wedding in Virginia with the glittering house and the long white dress. And I did get the life I promised myself. My own apartment on a high floor, my parents in a paid-off brick house, $30 million in my account, and my name in business articles I was too shy to read. What I didn't prepare for was how much that number would change the way Claire looked at me. After the sale, our calls grew shorter. She joked about rich girl problems whenever I mentioned anything from my life in New York. When she got engaged, I wired money to help with the wedding without telling her. I thought I was being kind. She thought I was trying to own her day. In her eyes, every dollar I spent was a reminder of the dollars she didn't have. I knew how to count money, but I didn't know how to count resentment. The memory snapped as someone inside the house shouted for help. Another scream rose, sharper than the first. The blackout around me was no longer the safe, still dark of my childhood. It was fast, panicked, full of moving shadows. My heart pounded against my ribs. The girl who once sat silently in a powerless house had grown into a woman who could pay any bill in the room, and yet, in that moment, all my money meant nothing. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pushed open the glass doors, stepping into the dark chaos of my sister's perfect American wedding as it started to fall apart. Inside the dark hall, my phone's small light cut a narrow path through moving bodies and overturned chairs. Someone bumped my shoulder and cursed. A child was crying somewhere near the back. The smell of perfume, sweat, and spilled wine mixed into something sharp and ugly. I held my phone higher and called out, "Claire?" My voice sounded too thin in all that noise. No one answered. "Everybody stay calm," the DJ shouted from somewhere near the bar. His voice shook a little. "It's just a power cut. We'll get the generator on in a second." But nothing hummed back to life. There was no safe backup, no silent machine to fix the night. Then I heard Jason. I knew it was him because I'd heard that voice at the rehearsal dinner, steady and low when he toasted my sister. Now it was rough with panic. "Somebody call an ambulance," he yelled. "Please, she's not breathing right." My heart dropped. I pushed toward the sound, past a table where glasses had fallen and shattered. A woman's heel snapped under my foot, and she gasped, but I barely heard her. All I could hear was my own pulse and Jason's voice calling for help again and again. When I reached the center of the dance floor, the world narrowed to a small circle of light. Several guests had their phone flashlights turned on, holding them over something on the floor. I stepped closer and saw the white shape of a wedding dress spread out like a snowbank. Claire lay in the middle of it, flat on her back, her hair loose and tangled, her eyes half closed. Her skin looked too pale, even in the harsh beams of our phones. Jason was kneeling beside her, one hand on her shoulder, the other shaking as he tried to keep her awake. "Claire." I dropped to my knees on the other side of her. The cold from the floor seeped through my dress. "Claire, it's me. It's Dawn." Her eyelids fluttered. She tried to focus on me, but her gaze slipped. Her breathing was fast and shallow, like a bird fighting against a cage. "Can't breathe," she whispered. A small foam of panic rose in my throat. I swallowed it down. I had faced investors and skyscrapers in America and quiet partners from Europe across polished boardroom tables. I had asked for millions of dollars without shaking. Now I could barely keep my hands steady on my own sister's arm. "Has this happened before?" I asked Jason, forcing my voice to stay calm. He nodded, eyes wide. "She said her chest hurt last week. I told her to see a doctor. She said it was just stress and coffee. She didn't want anything to ruin the wedding." He said the last words with bitter fear. "I'm calling 911, I said, even though someone else had already done it. It gave my hands something to do. While I spoke to the operator, answering questions in a voice that didn't sound like mine, I watched Claire's face. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and a smear of mascara ran down one cheek. In the dark, without the veil, she didn't look like the perfect bride from the photos. She looked like the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and hold onto my arm so tight it went numb. When the operator asked who I was, the words came out before I could think. "I'm her sister," I said. "Not the one who sold a company for $30 million. Not the one who sat by the trash cans. Just her sister." That was all that mattered right then. The ambulance arrived faster than I expected. Red and white lights flashed through the windows, throwing broken shadows across the walls. The paramedics rolled in a stretcher and a metal box of supplies. They moved with the clean speed of people who had done this 100 times. They checked her pulse, her blood pressure, her oxygen. They spoke in short, firm sentences. "Possible heart issue. We need to go now." "Who's riding with her?" Jason opened his mouth, but my father spoke first. "Her husband goes," he said, voice thick but steady. "And one of us." His eyes slid to me. "Dawn, go with them. Your mother and I will follow." I was surprised by how sure he sounded. For years, I had been the child who left, the one who lived far away in New York City, the one they watched on screens instead of across the table. Now, in this bright, terrible moment, he chose me without hesitation. I nodded and climbed into the ambulance beside Jason and Claire. As the door slammed shut, the noise from the hall disappeared. All that remained was the whine of the siren, the beeping of a monitor, and the short gasps of my sister's breathing. Jason gripped the rail above him, so hard his knuckles were white. I took Claire's hand. It felt smaller than I remembered. "I'm here," I told her. "I'm not going anywhere." Out the back window, I watched the big white house with its dark windows shrink away, like a scene closing on a stage. For months, my life had been about contracts and closing dates, about big numbers and bigger promises. I had fought for every dollar in that $30 million sale as if my future depended on it. Now, in the back of that speeding ambulance, I finally understood how wrong I'd been. My future was lying right in front of me, in a wrinkled wedding dress, fighting for breath. By the time we reached the hospital, the sky outside was turning from black to deep blue. Dawn, my namesake, was on its way. And my sister, the girl who once told me I didn't count, was being wheeled through the doors on a stretcher. I followed close behind, my heart louder than the siren had been, knowing that the next hours would rewrite our story in ways no contract ever could. The hospital lights were unforgiving. They were nothing like the soft gold glow of the chandeliers back at the wedding house. These lights were bright and flat and real, showing every line on every face. Nurses moved quickly through the halls, pushing carts, checking charts, calling out numbers that suddenly meant more than money ever had. Blood pressure, oxygen, heart rate. I followed the stretcher as far as they let me, my heels loud on the linoleum floor, my dress now wrinkled and stained at the hem. "We'll take it from here," a doctor said, blocking the door with his arm. Jason squeezed Claire's hand one last time before the doors closed between us. I stood there for a second, staring at the smooth white surface, as if I could somehow see through it. I couldn't. All I saw was my own reflection, pale and scared, a woman who had sold a company for $30 million and still felt completely powerless. In the waiting area, my parents sat in stiff blue chairs. My mother's eyes were red, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. My father had his elbows on his knees, fingers pressed against his mouth, like he was holding himself together. When he saw me, he stood up and pulled me into a hug so tight I could hardly breathe. For a moment, I was 12 again, small and scared in a dark house, except now the lights were on and the fear was different. "Any news?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "They're still running tests." My mother looked up at me. "You went in the ambulance," she said softly. "Thank you." "I didn't do anything," I answered. "They did." I nodded toward the hallway where the doctors and nurses moved like a quiet storm. I couldn't fix this if I had all the dollars in America and Europe combined. We sat in silence after that. Every few minutes, a new sound broke through the steady hum of the hospital. A laugh too loud, a cry too sharp, a phone buzzing, a cart rattling past. Someone had muted the television on the wall, so people's mouths moved without sound. Time stretched and folded in strange ways. 5 minutes felt like 50, an hour vanished when I checked the clock. At some point near dawn, when the sky outside the windows turned from black to gray and then to a faint pink, a doctor came toward us. He looked tired but calm. My body went stiff. My mother reached for my hand. My father stood up so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "She had a mild heart attack," the doctor said. "The stress, the long day, maybe something's building up for a while. But you brought her in quickly. She's stable now. She'll need rest and follow-up care, but she's going to be okay." The air rushed out of my chest. My mother started to cry, quiet and shaking. My father closed his eyes and whispered something under his breath. Jason covered his face with his hands and turned away for a moment, shoulders heaving. "Can we see her?" I asked. "One at a time for now," the doctor said. "Keep it calm and short, please. No big emotions." Then he smiled a little, as if he knew that was a silly request. "Well, as few big emotions as possible." They all looked at me. My mother nodded. "Go, Dawn. Tell her we're here. Tell her we're not going anywhere." The walk to Claire's room felt longer than it was. My heels clicked softly on the floor, then sank into the rubber mat just outside her door. I stood there for a second, hand on the handle, breathing in and out. For years, I had walked into boardrooms and meeting rooms in New York with my head high, ready to talk numbers and deals. This door felt heavier than all of those combined. When I stepped inside, the room was quiet. Machines beeped softly. Claire lay in the bed, pale and tired, her hair messy around her face. The white dress was gone. She wore a light hospital gown instead, thin and simple. For the first time in months, she looked like my little sister again. Not a bride, not a rival, not a sharp voice on the phone. Just Claire. Her eyes blinked open when she heard the door. "Dawn," she whispered. I moved closer to the bed. "Hey," I said. "You scared us." She tried to smile. "I scared myself," she answered. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were clearer than I expected. "Are Mom and Dad?" "In the waiting room," I said. "Jason too. Everyone's here. No one left." She stared at the ceiling for a moment. "I was so worried about the wedding," she said slowly. "About the dress, the photos, the cake, the guests, the stupid seating chart. I wanted everything to be perfect. I don't know what I wanted." "You wanted it to be your day," I said. Her gaze shifted to me. "I wanted it to be my life," she corrected. "Not your story. Not the sister of the woman who sold a company for $30 million. Just me. Just Claire." I swallowed hard. "Is that why you put me by the trash cans?" She winced. "That was petty."
I'm sorry.
"I wanted to make you small just for one night, so I could feel big." It was stupid. And cruel. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes. When the lights went out, I thought, this is it. I ruined everything. I pushed away the only person who kept us in the light. I took her hand, careful not to disturb the foreline. "Listen to me," I said. "I am not a number. I'm not $30 million. I'm your sister from that little house in Ohio, the one who shared the same thin blanket with you when the heater broke. I never wanted to be above you. I just wanted us both to make it out." Her fingers squeezed mine, weak but certain. "Do I still count?" she asked, voice shaking. "You always counted," I said. "Even when you tried to erase me. Even when you sat me by the trash cans. You still counted. And from now on, we both get a seat at the table. No more corners. No more outside." Outside the window, the sky brightened, soft pink spreading over the horizon. Dawn in America. My name, rising above the flat roofs and parking lots, washing this small hospital room in pale light. In that moment, I understood something simple and true. Houses, companies, even millions of dollars can come and go. But the people who remember you in the dark, who hold your hand when the numbers don't matter, that's your real wealth. That's the story worth telling.